Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Over the Cap podcast. It is May 26, 2024, and this is Jason Fitzgerald. You can find me on X at Jason_OTC. You can always view the podcast if you're looking to follow along with a little bit of video on YouTube. I think the channel is just Over the Cap there. But you can see it. It's usually linked in the linked on OTC if you want to check it out over there. Once again, it's been a couple of weeks since I've done one of these, but I don't anticipate this one being the mega podcast that happens when I miss a couple of weeks in a row. I think this will be a pretty normal length since there's really not too much news, I think, to go over right now. So, I'll try to get back on track with some of those things. I'll give a shout out, like I usually do, to my mom. So hello, Mom. They've made it through about 58 seconds right now, so I don't think they've fallen asleep on the couch yet. That'll happen in a little bit. We're going with just some random IPAs tonight, so whatever we've got upstairs, we'll bring them on down during the course of this and go through a couple of IPAs that we have lingering in the refrigerator, and that should be able to take us through tonight. So sorry that there's no video of me in this. Not that anyone really probably cares too much of that part of it, but main reason that we did not do a podcast last week was my computer was fried. What happened? I don't know. I was able to basically hold it together with a couple things of bubble gum and some tape. I got it to work to at least get most of the files that I needed off it, but that pretty much took up a lot of my time. I didn't expect that to happen. So I have a lot of stuff backed up, but I didn't have everything I needed backed up because I didn't plan on it just kind of dying out on me like that. So have something new set up here, and I just downloaded all the stuff for it, and I figured trying to throw the camera on there too was probably going to somehow mess it up even more. So I figured I would just hold off on that and, just do the screen capture, which hopefully will work. Hopefully the audio won't sound too crazy. I didn't even really get a chance to go through the settings on that one to see if that's even functioning right. So, yeah, a little bit trial by error here. Next time I do it, whether it's next week or the week thereafter, I think Megan has a recital next week, so I'm not sure if it'll be next week, but whenever we get around to it, I have a feeling that I'll get those kinks, I guess, ironed out for the most part. So I guess where to start is I'm going to go back a couple of weeks, and this will be for a couple of things. So talk about Jared Goff for a minute here. I still don't have all the particulars on that contract, though, so I can't really talk about the salary cap aspect of it as much. But, we'll talk about that a little bit. But I think the first thing I just wanted to mention was a friend of the show, Eric Eager, got a position with the Carolina Panthers, I believe, to head up their analytics department there. So, congratulations to him. I know that a lot of people that listen to this podcast have probably interacted with Eric over the years on Twitter. So, it's really cool to see him get an opportunity. So I'm really happy for him. I'm really excited for him to, get a chance to, jump in there and do that. Yes, Jacob.
Is it working?
Yeah, I think it's working. So my son is very interested to see if we got this working or not. Probably also partially interested in possibly playing PlayStation, so we'll see how that works out too tonight. But anyway, yeah. So no, congratulations to Eric. It's going to be disappointing to not have him out, in the public-facing football community, because I think he's been really good for it. But just another example of different ways that you can get an opportunity to potentially work in some way, shape, or form in the NFL. It doesn't have to be with a team. This is with a team, but, Eric, Pro Football Focus, Sumer Sports, and, just a lot of stuff kind of in public domain, where you get to meet a lot of people through all these different avenues. And so, congratulations to him. But, I probably has to hide out all his Twitter stuff and everything, that's there. But, it's just an example because I know we have so many people that ask all the time about working in the NFL and just, working in general, whether it's media, whether it's agencies, whatever it might be. Just look around and just see the different success stories of the people, that you've seen around on social media. And, that can give you some ideas, I think, for, ways that you can try to shape your career. And again, it's very hard to get those positions. It's extremely difficult. So, as long as I think you have that as the realistic goal, that it's very difficult to get there, but that you can find a way to try to get there while having fun, not having it, destroy you as being like the end all be all. You should do okay and probably have a chance to, contribute somewhere in the NFL landscape, that it is. So anyway, let's jump into Jared Goff there. $212 million contract. Let's see if I have the breakdown in here. I think I do. Yeah. So these are definitely the cash flow numbers on this contract. It's a pretty big deal. So the original numbers were put out there by Pro Football Talk, Mike Florio. The numbers were incorrect in there. I think a couple people picked up on that. I don't even know if he really corrected it. I think he corrected it in one part of it, not in the other part. But this is the actual breakdown that's in here, and I'm sure that this is all well done by now because this was a couple weeks ago when I put this out there. So he gets $52 million this year, in excess of his original salary. He'll have $70 million through the end of next year. That's sixth in the NFL. He'll be up to $125 million through the second year. That's second highest in the NFL. $165 million through year 3. That's also second highest in the NFL. Then in year 4, he'll be at $212, which is tied for second in the NFL, I believe, with Justin Herbert. So it's a big deal. This is, any way, shape, or form that you cut it, this is a massive contract. And I was pretty surprised. This to me is it's a contract that is very much tied into all of the success that the Lions had last year versus, I think, what's more of maybe a forward-looking approach to a winning strategy. One of the things that set Goff apart, I think, from a lot of people around the league is that his salary was really low relative to other starters in the NFL. Because on his prior contract, they inherited that contract from the Rams, and the Rams had paid a large portion of that contract. So you were talking about a contract that was originally, I think, about a $33.5 million a year. Going back however many years that was, which would be a bargain now anyway, just at that number. But given that the Rams picked up so much of the salary on the front end of that, Detroit inherited something that was probably like $27 million a year in that ballpark, I would say. And, that can give you in the NFL a pretty big advantage, when you have that. Now, how much the Lions use that money in free agency, I'd say that's a little bit iffier. It's really not until now that they've had the players to extend. And one of the ways I think to look at it is the benefit from Goff, whatever savings that were there, probably allowed them to easily do all these deals this year without really thinking about it too much. And maybe not having it hurt them too badly. But I always look at deals like this, and you get concerned a little bit with the long-term impact that's there, because now you've gone from a guy where, when you look at the numbers, his effective value was, Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield-ish, and obviously playing at a much higher level, to where, he's the second highest paid player in the NFL, at $53 a year. And even if you want to look at the effective value, and I think I wrote about that in here too. I thought I did. Maybe it's somewhere in the text in here. But yeah, it is. But at least I think it is. Let's see. I don't know. I thought it was there, but maybe not. Basically when you start looking at effective values on these contracts, what you're looking at is the old money plus the new money, and that drives the numbers down. But, you're talking about a player that's competing against rookies, and those players have, much, much, much less existing salary in their deals. So, like, Joe Burrow's effective value is far less than $55 million a year. If we open the player comp, let me see, because I think I put the effectives in there. Let's just look up Goff. Throw top 10. Now, this doesn't include old signing bonus money. I think this is just the total values on these deals. So Lamar Jackson at $52 million, that's legit. And then, because he was a free agent. So then you go to Goff as your next highest paid player from a cap perspective in the NFL at 48. If you throw in the old money into the deal, then you got Watson at 46, Kirk Cousins 45, Burrows at 44, Hurts at 43, Herbert 42, Mahomes 39, Murray 37, Josh Allen 35. Dak Prescott, is a legit 40, so he'd be in there as well. He just doesn't rank in the top 10, so that's just not in the auto pull on those players. So, any way you slice it, this is a tippy top NFL contract. And, you lose your margin for error, and what becomes the, underdog story kind of becomes like, if you're having some difficulty, it's going to be looked at very negative by the press. It's going to be looked at very negative by the fan base, because your expectations grow exponentially when your salary reaches these levels. I was a little surprised. I didn't expect him to get there. I thought he would have been by Cousins, and I didn't expect Cousins to get to 45 either. It's a weird spot. He's not old, even though he's on a third contract, right? He's 31 or so. Prescott's in the same kind of situation. Kirk Cousins is a lot older. So that can make it tough to compare. But, and Stafford's a little older than that too. But, I always thought Stafford just made sense. Like, okay, he's going to ask for more than Stafford. You give him 41. It's like the Rams don't get enough credit, I think, for that Stafford contract because the market had already moved when they did that deal. And, they were able to get Stafford to agree to that number. So I'm a little surprised by the Lions here, for doing that. Now, does this impact them this year? Absolutely not. Their team is going to be the same whether or not he was extended. Does it impact them next year? Probably not. They have structured at the moment, from the way that this was all written, and like I said, I don't have the full breakdown on this. I just had the cash breakdowns and the basics of the guaranteed salaries that are here. So we have him down at a 69.6 cap hit in 2026. My assumption is that is much, much, much lower. My assumption is that there's going to be 4 or 5 void years on this deal, and that he will have an option in 2025. I think he'll have an option in 2026, and I think he'll have an option again in 2028. And then they'll just have a bunch of void years on the back end. So I have a feeling that they're going to defer a lot of the cap charges on this one to the post-Goff potentially the post-Goff era. That would be my guess. But the impact that really comes from this contract, even if they do that, the impact that you're going to look for is 2026. And a lot of that is going to be based on what the Lions do next year in the 2025 offseason, much more so than what they do this year, with any of their things. They're fine with the cap next year. I have them at $50 million. And that's without even jumping where the cap is going to be. But, let's just see where they rank relative to the rest of the league. Probably middle to top middle. Yeah, so they're right around number 10, 11, something like that. And then in 26, you can see, now this is with Goff at that big number, so it might not be this bad, but you can see they drop into the bottom 10. So this is why I say that, a lot of what is going to happen to the Lions in 26 is really going to be dependent on 25. And, that's one of those things where, are you going to go crazy, in free agency with the cap space that you have in hopes of, going further in the playoffs if they don't win it all this year? Or do they continue to take kind of a steady tempered approach? If they do that, they're probably fine. If you end up having a year next year where you go all in, that's probably more where you run into trouble. But, I think my overall thing with them is I was just a little surprised that they went this high. And maybe they didn't think it was worth, getting down and, fighting with this. How they would do it. If you peg this to his old deal or his deal with the Rams, the Lions do get some cash benefits on this. He doesn't get the kind of raise through the first year, that he did. And that's probably what sealed the deal for the Lions. Guarantee package is legitimate. The triggers are all kind of in his favor. The guarantee at signing is not huge relative to the market. But, you break down the way that those dead numbers are going to work on there. He's not really going anywhere. It's really that last year of the contract, which is the first one that you might say, well, that's the time you can move there, move off him. One of the things I mentioned here, and, the Lions, all their deals that they're doing are 4 years in length, 4 new years. I don't know why you don't get yourself a 5th year in this contract. Given the scope of this deal, it's so big, you need that 5th year to, just give you more of a benefit on the back end. I don't want to be having to have contract discussions with someone who's 33, 34, 35. I want to push those as long as possible. And the market itself is not 4 years anymore. So I don't care what you're doing with the rest of your team. You get your quarterback in on 5. He's young enough and you're clearly bullish enough on him with these numbers, to go to 5 years. I believe he's got a no trade and all that stuff as well, too. I don't know why they didn't go 5 years. And, maybe that's just doing things out of order. You get your tackle done, you get your wide receiver done, they're all 4. That makes it tough to go to your quarterback and say, well, we need 5. That just tells you should have done the quarterback first, done him at 5, and then figured out what you do with the other guys. So I think that's a whiff by the Lions there too. Unless it was going to materially change something with the way the salary was going to get paid out, or I don't even know what else it could have changed. Like, you look at the outs in the contract, they're not really until later in the deal anyway. So I don't know. I don't know why you don't get that 5th year. That just seems like a bad miss by them. But we're gonna see. Now I'll say this about the Lions. I think that they probably have to start looking at doing certain things a little bit more traditionally, rather than kind of hoping for the best with some of the moves they do, which have worked out. It's not like they haven't. But you're going to put yourself in a position where it's going to be harder and harder to do those kind of things when you've got some of these big salaries on there. I think the Lions right now are second or third in the NFL in top 5 spending. Let's see. Second, 140.7 per year in new money for top 5. That's only behind Philadelphia. NFL average is 108, so that's a gigantic gap. Now, I mentioned here that'll jump up a little bit because you'll see, a couple players sign extensions in August, but it's not going to jump to 130. Now, when you get to top 10, Lions are number 3 at 187.4, but the NFL average here is 154, so you can see that gap is closed. And that's because if you go in and you look at the Lions, it's very top heavy with like 3 or 4 players, and then it really tapers down very quickly. So they do have a lot invested in a handful of guys, but then there's a big drop off. So it's not like the Eagles and the Browns where it's just like heavy contract, heavy contract, heavy contract, heavy contract. Here it's like all the money is in a handful of players. And if something negative happens there, you probably aren't going to have that other talent to fall back on. But, you've got your rookies, your young, cheap guys. And, that's kind of what you go for. Overall, I mean, it's a great deal, I think, for Jared Goff. I think it's a so-so deal for Detroit. But if they're happy to have their, quarterback, I mean, what more can you say? This is probably one of the Jared Goff story is really one of the great comeback stories in sports. When we're just talking about kind of on field stuff, I don't want to get into guys that have had awful injuries or certain kinds of tragedies or something like that. But, from just a football standpoint, this is a guy that was left for dead, a couple of years ago. He really was. He was completely given up on by the Rams. You look at the way they treated him on the way out the door. After the season, what's Goff's status with the team? He's our quarterback for now. That's all I'm going to say. They had nothing positive to say about him at that point. Like that relationship had just gone so far south. And Goff's reputation around the league was not good. You looked at Carson Wentz. Wentz, who had much more of an injury history, went for 3 that had a likely to be earned escalation to a number 2, and had a reasonable chance of a 1, and ended up getting a 1 for Philadelphia, who played that card masterfully. And Goff was essentially a throw-in, and I know Rams fans hate this, Lions fans hate to hear that. I'm telling you, he was a throw-in that trade. That was not the Lions going in there and saying, the only way you're getting Matthew Stafford is if we get Jared Goff. The Rams would have been giving high fives if that was the case. They looked at Jared Goff as if he was going to be, bridge a gap where you get a functional quarterback in there that they thought could play, was going to be a low expectation system. You have a coaching staff that's not going to go wild and put a ton of pressure on him the way things were being done, I think, in LA at the time. And, they threw him in there and they basically got extra because they were picking up a terrible contract. And believe me, everybody around the league said, terrible contract. And that includes the Lions. That was not considered a positive contract whatsoever. I had people tweeting me saying that he was a number one pick, that Stafford was worth 3 number ones, and Goff was valued as a 1. Come on. Like that's just silly talk. If you want to say that he was given a 3 the way Wentz was, it's not the case, but you can believe it. At least there's a argument that you can make there. You can't make the argument that he was worth a 1. This is a guy that was benched for an undrafted player going into the playoffs. Yeah, they talked about him being hurt or whatnot. This was the that was the Sean McVay channeling the old Bill Parcells of, I don't want you here, and I'm going to make life miserable for you and embarrass you in public, so you don't want to be here either. That's what that was. They couldn't wait to get rid of him. And move on. And, it's just a total redemption story for him to go from that, to where he is now. And, it is probably one of the fairest trades. I don't know if you would call it fair. I don't even know what you want to call it. But, I mean, it is probably one of the greatest trades for both teams in NFL history. And you rarely see things like this where both sides benefited big. I mean, Stafford went on to have a terrific year with the Rams, and they win a Super Bowl. He's still the quarterback there, and they made the playoffs again this year with him there as a quarterback. And the Lions have become relevant again, or maybe I should just say they've become relevant. I don't even know if an again should be in there. In large part because of him. Because Goff has been a functional, better than functional. He's an above average quarterback. And they got a bunch of picks from the Rams, that have helped them out rebuilding that team. And it's just that rare win-win that happens in the NFL. Where both sides were thrilled, should still be thrilled, with the outcomes of that. So I just think it's a great story. Kurt Warner is another one that comes to mind. Twice. His was obviously the more famous for him was the being cut and doing the Arena League and working in the grocery store and whatever, and then making his way back to the NFL and just leading that explosive offense to the Super Bowl. But, there was a second chapter there too. Kurt Warner was given up on by the Rams. They thought they had a younger, more durable player that, Mike Martz was just like, it's my system. I can make it work with him. And they did to some extent. And, Warner ended up going to the Giants, I think was the next one. And, he was benched with the Giants, not because of performance, but just because they wanted to get Eli Manning on the field. He was the number 1 overall pick. So, he played half a year, was okay. Goes on to Arizona, where he was going to back up. Was it Matt Leinart at the time? One of the USC guys, I think. Ends up taking over, and they make it to a Super Bowl. Explosive offense. Just an amazing story there as well. And, I think it's like from a football perspective, I mean, that these are like two really, really amazing ones. Where you kind of have these comeback stories like that on the field. So, that got me to thinking about quarterback market growth. And so I did an article on that. I'll just run through it here if you want to take a look. So if you're following along on YouTube, you'll see the graph, this chart here, and you can see that. So I started in 2013 with the Rodgers and Flacco deals at $20.1 million. But then really what I wanted to look at was after that, because that was the last time you had a complete block on the quarterback market. Then you got into this thing where we just start seeing the salaries go higher and higher. So you've got Flacco and Luck, Carr and Stafford the following year. You had Garoppolo, Cousins, Ryan, and then Aaron Rodgers again. You had Russell Wilson jumping Aaron Rodgers. Then you had Patrick Mahomes. And you had Prescott and Josh Allen. Now I'm taking Mahomes' his first 5 years. His deal was so hard to value at 45. Nobody really did. And then the next thing that was even remotely close to a block really was Rodgers again when he got to 50. And that didn't last long. But you did at least have a couple of players come in between there. And, then last year you had the Hurts, Herbert, Burrow, group, Lamar Jackson in there as well. That jumped that market 51, 52, 52, 5, 55. I think was the order there. And so you can see you got a pretty linear trend with quarterback growth, every year where we see that market kind of slowly increasing. A couple people had asked me about this, like how does it compare to the salary cap? I mean, it's bigger than the cap growth, right? We've gone from 20, Luck was probably 25. So we've gone from 25 to 55 from 2016 to 2024. And our cap in 2016, I don't remember the exact number that was, but I know it's more than, to be double, it would have had to be around 120, 125. And that was what the cap was like in 2013. 2013, I think it was 133. It's probably like 163, maybe 165, 167, something like that. So, it's outpaced somewhat. But I think the interesting thing where you look at this is when we look at the players and you look at the growth rates that are there with the contract, like what did they mean for the market? And, I don't think there's any doubt when you look at, these kind of numbers, the most important player in the NFL in the last 10, 15 years has been Aaron Rodgers. Some might say negatively when we go back to 2013 that, he didn't push the numbers more. But, Rodgers in 2013, while he was the best quarterback in the league, I don't know if he had established himself as being like on a different plane. I feel like that kind of happened a little bit after that, but I might be wrong on that. That might be my old man memory, thinking a little differently there. But, he basically had a 9.5% impact on the market as it jumped from $20.1 to $22 million. And, then when he signed again at 33.5, that was 11.7% more than the next closest player, which was Matt Ryan. Then you jump up to 2022. Rodgers at that point in time, 17% increase in market when he gets to that $50.3 million number with the Packers. So, I mean, he's the guy most responsible for growing quarterback salaries in the NFL. I mean, it's not even close. Mahomes was a 13%, and you can give an asterisk with that. I mean, however you want to value it. But him taking a 10-year deal was just a complete step backwards, for the league, or for the players. But it only impacted one guy. Josh Allen was really the only guy that got a longer term deal. I think he took 6. And then I think Prescott was Prescott after that. No, Prescott was before that. Prescott got 4. I think it was before that at least. So I don't really know. Allen probably shouldn't have done the 6 either, but in any event, so it's almost like that jump was a negative because of the size of the contract. So really the only other guy that you have that was really, really, really impactful, I think on everything was Luck. Luck had a 11% growth, and there's a lot of positives to Luck. I think Luck is underrated by a lot because of his career kind of flaming out very quickly. Just injuries and just, didn't really want to try to go through all these injuries and, keep plugging along. But at the same time, I think there was some overrated qualities as well as to how far along he was. He was far along in the sense that he could pull a really bad football team, the culture of a bad football team, that played in a bad division, to respectability. I don't know if... It's hard to say because he never had a better team around him. I don't know if Luck had that other gear that I know exists with Rodgers, I know existed with Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, those types of players, where, those kind of big game kind of moments, that you could have. I don't know if he had that or not, but in any event, he was a big driver of the market as well. And then you look at these other guys, and you can see they're the leapfrog players, right? Joe Flacco grows it by 0.5%, Joe Flacco by 0.6%, Derek Carr 1.7, Garoppolo 1.9, Kirk Cousins 1.8, Dak Prescott 1.1, and again, I know that falls in that weird kind of period. That's there. Jalen Hurts 1.4, Justin Herbert 1, Lamar Jackson 2. So I think when we project these contracts, it's important to keep some of these, historical players in perspective. And, you can also see sometimes by the length of time that those players are at the top, like kind of how really important they are to the things, how they can kind of form a block at times, on the market. So I was looking at stuff and just kind of saying, where do the guys go from here? The players who are going to be free agents. The only guy that I see right now, that really I think has that chance to be a legit market mover. I think it's Trevor Lawrence. I think that's really the only guy. The problem for Lawrence is, Lawrence's on-field success is not there. Lawrence has a lot of similarities, I think, to Luck, in that, he's clearly the guy that drives what is not a great football team. I think the Jaguars are better built than the Colts were during that period, but they also play in a terrible division, and Luck was basically in the playoffs every year. Ironically, I think the year that they missed was year before he signed the big extension, and he was hurt, but I don't think they played that well when he was hurt that year. I'm sorry, but before he got hurt, I think actually the better record-wise, I think was it Hasselbeck that was his backup? Might have been. Somebody like that. Anyway, so I think that's the one thing, both are elite prospects, were elite prospects, which plays a role. both are the reasons for the team's success, but one guy made the playoffs and won playoff games, and Trevor Lawrence hasn't done that. So I don't know right now if Trevor Lawrence, if a deal was done, I don't know why people are surprised that he's going to get at least $50 million a year. Like that to me is just a given. But when you look at the kind of historical trends that are there, I don't know if there's enough of a resume for him to get that eye-popping number. 58, 59, 60. Right now, I almost feel like this would be, okay, well, what's the next logical step up, from Joe Burrow, 55-5. And, if the Jaguars really want to dig in on it and you want to start getting into, Burrow's had a ton of playoff success. You can start to peg at that point to Justin Herbert. Now, Goff throws a wrinkle into anything for a team because Goff is a much easier player for anyone to benchmark against. But, I think that Lawrence, when you just look at those things, and I know I've said many, many times over that Dak Prescott is like the guy that I thought would get to 60. And that there would be more pressure on Dallas to do a deal. And he does, right? Like he has a ton of leverage over Dallas. And that's always a good thing. When you have leverage, it's like you want to be a great player and you want to have leverage. And, sometimes when we look at even some of these contracts, where we look at some of these guys like a Garoppolo and a Cousins that were able to push forward, even in those cases, some of the stuff that they did was more about having leverage, I think, than necessarily, being great quarterbacks, right? Garoppolo had the leverage from winning a couple of games and being, traded for with the second round pick, I think it was. Cousins was a free agent. So, I mean, there's different things that you can look at with these guys. And Prescott's got the leverage part. And, I mean, Prescott is a good quarterback. He doesn't get to that next level with them, it seems. So I don't know if he's going to get that gigantic bump unless they go out and he wins. He wins Super Bowl this year. That's a whole different ball game. I could see Jerry, though, also getting tied down somehow to this concept of, Jared Goff's not the highest paid player in the NFL, so why should you be the highest paid player in the NFL? And to me, that's like a bad road to go down if that's the discussion. But I could see that coming up. And it's like, man, Goff probably shouldn't be at 53. If Goff had come in at 40, like, you've got a great argument there. The way Stafford was at 40. But, when you've got Cousins at 45 and you've got Goff at 53, I think it's tough for Jerry to come in and be like, you should be at 40 again. Or, something like that. I think you just say, okay, look, there's a number that has to make you happy and make us happy. And if it's 55-5, let it be 55-5 if we don't, but we don't want to go to 60. Something like that. The other players are Jordan Love. I think Love is somewhere below that. I don't think that there's enough of a track record there. And I know we've seen guys get big deals, and obviously the Rodgers numbers show you the Packers' willingness, through the years, whether it's with this, executive group or whomever before, to do these big deals at that position. It still is only a couple of games with Love. And, just from a negotiating standpoint, I mean, the last go around, you saw that Love did not want to bet on himself. In theory, Love could still not want to bet on himself. Like, I could see a scenario where you look at this as Jordan Love, and say, okay, I had 8 wonderful games, 9 wonderful games, 10 wonderful games, however many. What happens, next time around if I don't? And I could see, that being an issue, for him, because he was clearly worried about, doing poorly as the starter, and ending up with far less than what he ended up on with this with this 1-year contract extension in lieu of an option. And I could easily see a scenario where, the Packers are like, well, we can kind of do the same thing here and, kind of play on his thought of, well, what if I don't have a great year? Shouldn't I take $48 million or $50 million or whatever right now rather than holding out for, being that guy that gets that, gets to get thrown on this little chart of market movers, The final one you've got is Tua. I don't see him fitting in with this group at all. Like, I don't see him right now having any leverage the way some of these lower level guys did, like a Flacco. High level play is not there. So I don't really understand where that's kind of coming from, where people are talking about that. And reportedly, he turned down $50 million a year. There's a lot that goes into that. What kind of guarantee package is there? Is it a legit rolling guarantee like Kyler Murray got and, Lamar Jackson got and Jalen Hurts got? Or is it something a little bit more standardized with like 2 years and then, see what happens in the third year that's more along the lines of like a Derek Carr kind of deal? If that's the case, maybe I could see where you would turn that down. But I don't know. If they were offering me 50, I don't see the high end that's there for him. I don't think Dolphins are that good. I think they showed that last year when they had to step up in class, and play against some of these teams. They're just not built. They're built, I think, for one style of play, and I don't know how long that style is going to last for. So I don't know. And who knows where that team is going to be, with their players after this season. I mean, they're kind of all in on this year. And then I think it's just a question of where they go, after that. So I don't know. If I was him, I would have taken that deal, because I think, with Trevor Lawrence, I think there's a possibility they could be a lot better, and he gets like a big boost. Prescott, I can kind of see both sides. Like if he gets hurt, that's kind of bad. Probably not devastating, but kind of bad. Jordan Love, I could see both sides of it. Tua, I just don't. If they're offering 50, I just see all downside with not great upside. With him. So let's see other stuff here before we get into questions. So these are the UDFA numbers. So we have, I think, all the undrafted salaries at this point. So the Chiefs surprisingly led the way this year with about $1.9 million in guaranteed salary for the players. So they were number one in the NFL there. I don't think that's too surprising. I think Kansas City, they know the way the game is played. They also signed a lot of guys. They have 19 guys they signed. I think they understand that they need a couple undrafted guys to kind of balance out the team. And it's worth giving these salary guarantees to get guys in camp, get a first-hand look at them, and see where they go, knowing that a lot of this guarantee is going to be offset whether it's on your own team, by your own team with them on the practice squad, where, they'll earn a little over $200,000, or, bouncing around the rest of the NFL on practice squads during the course of the year, or maybe making an active roster, to where that guarantee is basically offset. So, I think that's kind of where they're coming from. Washington, now theirs was guarantees on 12 players. They're at 1.7 million. They had 179.5 on the signing bonuses, so they were pretty high. Guarantee per player, they had to be way up there. Arizona was probably highest. Let me see. I just have these sitting in Excel. Yeah, they're at 139. Oh, the Eagles are at 168 a player. Let's see where Arizona is. Arizona, I only have like 3 guys. Yeah, they're at 158 a player. So again, not surprising. They need talent. They need players. So you guarantee as much as possible to bring guys in. Broncos, 1.47. Eagles, 8 players, 1.35 million in guarantees. They're one of the teams that might have maxed out the signing bonus pool. I don't remember what the number is this year, but they went to 181, 103. I think that's highest in the league. Raiders were at 181 and 1.14. Jets, 22 guys, 1.19, 130.5 thousand in a signing bonus there. Look, the Jets, they need players. Their Jets are in a weird spot. I'm saying about the Dolphins being all in. That's the Jets right now, and the Jets are looking for younger talent. Not just for this year, but for the future, because there's not going to be a lot of avenues after this year. They're going to have to either, if the year goes really well, it's going to be a lot of salary cap gymnastics, I think. And if it doesn't go that well, they need a lot of guys that can step in where they can say, hey, look, we developed a couple of these young guys, and they could be ready for next year when you're trying to pitch your case to Woody that you should remain general manager or head coach or whatever. Rounding out the top 10, Jaguars 1.1 million, Vikings 1.05, and then the Dolphins at 946,000. Teams that did not do much on the UDFA front, Steelers, no surprise there, 93,000. They don't do salary guarantees, so signing bonus is going to be the guarantee. Falcons, 111,000 in guarantees. They didn't do much. Bengals, 118.5. Rams, just 181. So the Rams take a very different approach than Kansas City. The Rams at 181,000. It's all paid as signing bonus money. They're not doing the guarantees to attract the guys. They're just doing the bonuses. The Rams' strategy with this was very much more like what teams used to do. So when I used to just kind of follow the Jets were very predictable with their UDFA patterns. And so were a lot of teams. Teams didn't really do the big guarantees. It was mainly signing bonuses back then. But the Jets were very predictable. It was like if you were going to sign with the Jets, you were going to get this bonus. I forget what the standard bonus was for the Jets at the time, maybe $5,000, $7,000. But it was like every undrafted player got the same number. Unless they were signed off the tryout week, in which case they didn't get a bonus. So, I remember at the time I was like, oh, that's probably how things are around the rest of the league. And no, it's the rest of the league puts different values, on the players. And you see it much more so now because the guarantee levels are higher on the P5s, whereas, again, before it used to just be that signing bonus stuff. But the Rams kind of take that approach more. Like there is a hierarchy within the Rams group, but they're not going crazy with it, and they're not over guaranteeing the deals, to bring the guys in. They're basically saying, I think, hey, look, we've had guys contribute. We love to develop guys that we bring in. We'll give you a nice little bonus to come here, and that's it. We're not going to give you a salary guarantee. Like, you're going to make our practice squad probably, but we're not going to guarantee it. It's a little bit different, I think, than Kansas City. Ravens 2045, a lot of volume with 25 players, but they're not looking to spend a ton on those guys either. They know that it's long shots for a lot of the players. Packers 267, Chargers. I thought the Chargers would have gone higher, but they're not looking to do that. Colts just a couple of players. Titans, they're a little surprising that they didn't go more. Patriots are cheap, so not too surprising there. So that was just how the UDFA stuff broke down. I just thought that was kind of interesting to take a look at there. Just rating by signing bonuses. Cardinal. I'm wondering if I have an error on the Cardinals here. $9,000 seems very low that they just didn't do any signing bonus money. So I think I might have something wrong there. I'll have to go back and look at Arizona. Again, it's only a couple of guys, but I got to go back and check. But the Packers were at 67,000, Falcons 76.5, Patriots 84.5, Steelers 93, Texans 95. Those are the 6 teams that were under $100,000 in signing bonus money paid. You had 4 teams pretty much right around 180. That was Washington, the Rams, the Raiders, the Eagles. Washington was a little bit below that. They were at 179.5. I'm going to guess there could be somebody I don't know about. They could have gone up to that 181 as well. Or maybe they're holding something back in case they find somebody they want to sign in July or June or something that's really slipped through the cracks and they want to throw them $1,000. That's a possibility as well. Speaking of the rookies, we got the rookie contracts, most of them coming in, most of them been spot on with what our projections were. A couple guys were about $8 off. A couple were $4 off. It's pretty good. So, I get a kick out of it because every time one of these first round pick signs, you just see these ridiculous tweets that come up where it's like, so-and-so, and I don't remember what the number is on the Marvin Harrison deal. Let's say he signed for, here it is, 35-4. And, someone will tweet out like, deal signed, Cardinals Harrison agree on rookie contract, $35.4 million, all guaranteed, like big deal negotiated by so-and-so. I don't know if they did that part of it with it. I don't know. Harrison might represent himself. I don't even know. I haven't paid that kind of attention to who's repping who. And I get a kick out of it. And I think it was Will Parkinson that, tweeted it out where he retweeted someone, that did one of those silly tweets. And he was just like, as expected. And it's like, yeah, I mean, we've had these numbers for these guys for about, once we kind of got an idea where the cap was going to be and the limitations that were going to be on the rookie pool, probably around 2 months, exactly down to the dollar what the guys are going to sign for. And there's obviously some other things that happen with these contracts, but, I thought it was just silly. And then I'm like, why do we make a big deal out of this? And I'm guilty of it at times too, not really with the signings. I'm guilty of it during the draft where I'll tweet out, for like some of the top 10 picks, what the contract value should be for the players. The only time you really should be thinking about this stuff is if a player is not in camp, in August. Then it's a question of like, wait a minute, what's going on? Otherwise, it's really a whole lot of nothing. Most of the delays that happen really stem from signing bonus payments, and that's really it. Kind of what's happened is that the players at this point expect the signing bonus, if you're at the top of the draft, to basically all be paid out within 2 to 3 weeks of signing the deal. I'd say around that time frame. I think Lawrence might have been the guy that was the first to get it done to that level, where the whole thing got paid. And then sometimes you'll see silly stuff. Like, I think the Jets one year were still fighting with, was it Wilson or was it Darnold? I think it was Wilson over offsets. And it's like, that's just a waste of time. The offset battle. It's like, look, if Zach Wilson was so bad, he probably wouldn't, get paid. And if he's not that bad, it's like, you don't care about the offsets. So, whatever. But what's happened is because of that payment and because, agencies don't want to say like, you want to be the group that negotiated the contract that says, see, we're always working for you. We're always getting something different. And we got this entire bonus paid out in 2 weeks. And, for you, we're going to try our best to get it paid out in 10 days. Maybe we aren't going to get there, but, we're going to try our best. And we were able to get this one in 14 days or 15 days. We're going to try to get it for you in 10. And if we're not successful in that, just imagine where we're going to be when it's time for your first veteran contract, that first extension, how much we're going to get you there, because we have a lot more ability to negotiate on those deals. We're not as pigeonholed on this. So, they use this as kind of like a benchmark for them. And so, for teams, it becomes like a dumb thing. Like, if you're the number one overall pick, what difference does it make if I sign now, and let's say that I'm willing to do a deal where I get half of my signing bonus on June 1st. Let's say I get $15 million on June 1st, and then I get the other $15 million on August 15th. Like, isn't that the same or better than waiting until August 1st to sign a deal, getting my entire bonus on August 15th, but being able to beat my chest and saying, yeah, I'm getting it all paid out in 15 days. But what's going to happen is you're going to sign that deal on August 1st, and Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, Tom Pelissero, that group is all going to be out there putting out the paid in 14 days, paid in 15 days, throwing it out there. And then Flory will jump on with it and be like, all paid immediately, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, what really, if you just take a step back and you don't think about what works best for your agency, what works best for your client? Would it be, to have $15 million in the bank today and another $15 million in the bank August 15th, or nothing in the bank today and then all the rest of it on August 15th? But this one doesn't let you beat your chest and throw it out there that you got the team to pay all that money right away. So anyway, it's only something you worry about if it drags into the beginning of camp. Otherwise, it's a nothing. But I whenever I see these things, I'm like, and you got to go back and see what those old deals look like. So if you want to see an example of it, because it's something that I talk about on the podcasts every now and then, you can go to OTC and you can check out the breakdown of Larry Fitzgerald's original contract. I figured Harrison was the one that triggered me on this. I'll go back on the Cardinals. Somebody did actually ask for it, but that was kind of one of the guys I was leaning towards, even though, Fitzgerald, we're going back 20 years now. So this was even before the rookie deals went really nutty, which was really, it was like 2006, I think, when they started to go like nutty. Like before that, it was like quarterbacks. So this one was actually relatively simple, and I'll just run through this here. But the original contracts had to fit in the same kind of parameters, kind of that you see now, with a little bit of exceptions. So basically, his deal was a 6-year deal, $17.7 million, APY 2.956. If they decline the option, it'd be a five-year deal for $16.382. That's an APY of $3.3 million. Doesn't look too impressive. nothing too crazy. 8.5 first year, 5.3 second year, about 550,000 year 3, 830 year 4, 1 million year 5, 1.4 million year 6. So, heavily front loaded, just like the deals are now, right? You get a lot of the signing bonus up front, and that's about it. But then you get into the fun stuff with the contracts. So he had his one-timer or log bonus. This was the stuff. You had to be so bad not to earn this. I can really only think of one player who didn't earn it. It was a Jet. I'm sure there's others. All right. I'm sure there's some other guys. But for people that weren't, hurt, or tragedy occurred, I'm not sure there was anybody else. But this is what he needed. 35% playing time in a qualifier. Qualifiers. Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, 41 receptions, leads the team in receptions, 801 receiving yards, 18.6 yards per receptions, 12 touchdowns, 1,600 offensive yards. Team improves in net yards on offense. Team improves in net yards per pass play. Team's win total increases. So they give you 8 million different ways to earn that bonus. And these eventually became even easier than this. Those high-end ones are just there in the event that he has a relatively good or great rookie season and the team still sucks. So it gives you an avenue to earn that because if the team finishes bottom 5 in the NFL, that qualifier is not met. But they're giving you basic stuff. When you're a bad team, you're picking top 5, top 10. Increasing your win total should not be difficult. Improving your net yards on offense should not be difficult. All right? That's why teams like the Jets use those qualifiers now, because their offense was putrid last year. They have to be better with Aaron Rodgers. Even if he only plays 5 games, they have to end up being better than they were last year. So if he got that would have unlocked, I think it was 2.7. Every year that same bonus is available. It's just that in the second year, third year, whenever year of the deal, it would jump to 45%. Now, his was only available, I think, in the first 3 years. Over time, that would grow to be available in every year of the contract. But, it was a $2.7 million bonus. So, that jumped his contract up to $20.4 million over 6. Once he earned that. Then you got into your log escalators. So this was also tied to the one-timer, meaning these are pretty likely to be earned. If he earned it, 2007 salary escalates by 2.75. 2008 was 3.5. 2009 was $11 million. So now, once that escalator is earned, which it's expected to be, you get into a deal that is worth $40.437 million over 6 years. That's $6.7 million a year. If you valued that on today's scale, it would be basically like being selected 8th or 9th. And that was when the salary cap was $80.6 million a year. So I mean, that's pretty crazy. Then players had high-end escalators. So that was, if you actually were a good player, you got bonus. So he had an escalator for 2007. This is the only one he didn't get. You needed to average 90 receptions a year from 2004 to 2006. I mean, that's near impossible. But he, so he didn't get that. 2008, as long as he was selected to a Pro Bowl between 2004 and 2007, he'd get $5 million in 2008. That also was tied into 2009, so you'd get a $5 million escalator there. If he got a second Pro Bowl, he'd get another $5 million on his 2008 salary. So the max package on this very quickly would grow. So this grew from the base value in the NFL contract system of being a contract that was worth, $2.96 a year? Yeah, $2.956 million a year to a realistic value of $6.7 million a year and a potential value of $10.1 million a year. That was the way the old rookie system worked. And the player pick number 6 might get a better contract than the player pick number 3. A quarterback was going to get a better contract than someone else. It was just all over the place. It was the Wild West. It was crazy time. You had teams that didn't want to draft certain players because of the agents that represented them. You had teams that just didn't want to draft certain positions because of the salary expectations. This stuff was meaningful, and this is why there was a long time, that would happen there. And, I'm running through these numbers. Now, these big numbers only applied to like the top 8 picks in the draft, maybe top 10, definitely top 5, but, pick 6, 7, 8, pretty high too, and maybe even all the way through 10, where there was a massive difference between what you see now. But if you want to see the impact that this has had on the league, let's take a look at this. So Fitzgerald's contract had him at 38 over 5. All right. Wide receiver in 2024, won Pro Bowl in the first 3 years, would end up with a 50-year salary around 20. That had put the 2004 contract on par with a 10th or 11th pick in the draft today, assuming that player made a Pro Bowl. Like, how nutty is that? This was a deal signed 20 years ago. 6-year value was 55.5. Comparison here, picking up a 50-year option, then tagging the player. That brings him to being like the 20th overall pick in the draft. Wild. So the next thing I wanted to do was say, well, where would Fitzgerald's rookie contract be with the numbers that were here, if we just inflate it for cap growth? Contracts grow more than the cap. They would have grown more than that. But if we just grew it on the cap, $31.9 million a year. That would make him number 2 in the NFL overall without playing. Oh, well, that's the high end value. So I can't say without playing a snap. Based on what he earned, $29 million a year. So that was by not earning the one escalator. And even when you get into the base values of those deals, you'd be looking at something that would be, a contract that's like top 15. It'd be worth $21 million a year. Yeah, that's like top 14, top 15. So, you can see why the NFL wanted out of this system so bad, because even though we do look at like the Bradfords and, this contract, Sue and McCoy, those were big ones at those positions. Most of the time, the guys were going to end up with a contract that probably was going to be top 10, not top 1. The defensive tackles ended up as top 1. A safety would usually be like right around the top. Most of the other guys would probably be right around 10. So, that just gives you an idea. If we looked at this and we would say that, okay, a player drafted like number 3, number 4 overall at wide receiver would wind up with a contract worth $32 million a year. Obviously, that tells me that the NFL market would have had to adjust accordingly, and so you'd see your wide receiver salaries right now up to probably $40 to $43 million a year. And instead, the market's at 32, and you can argue those numbers a lot of different ways. So you can see the big change that this has had. Because what's happened is you used to be able to get these rookies that would sign these deals and have these base values that would be around, 10th highest paid in the league or so. And again, it just becomes very easy to benchmark against. Like, this is crazy that this rookie's making this much money and I'm an established player. Obviously, I need to make far more than him. So, the NFL, these are the soft factors that happen there. And the other thing is that these contracts did give a lot of leverage. So when you look at Fitzgerald's deal here, where you had that log escalator, as I called it, $11 million in 2009 with a high-end 5. So you got $16 million, in escalators and $17 million in cash that all had to be accounted for in the cap, plus whatever signing bonus money was in there, $2 million. You're talking about a 18, 19, $20 million salary that would have been on a time. They didn't expect the cap to grow the way that it did. I think it was around 123 around that point in time. So that would have been about 20 million on a 123 cap. And really the NFL probably had only expected the cap to be around 100 million at that point in time. And the CBA they negotiated in 2006 dramatically jumped the cap. So, I mean, you can get an idea as to, how much portion, percentage-wise, of the cap those players were going to take up. And that's why when I talk about, looking back at, cap planning and all that kind of stuff, that really you want to start in 2015, 2016, because that's when the last of those old deals were finally gone. The Sue, Eric Berry, those guys were out. And you needed that because they all got different types of leverage in those rookie deals that were able to push their contracts up a lot. But it's always good when people make a big deal out of those old contracts to, really go in there and, just see how different things were, kind of way back when, and what impact that had on the league. All right, let's do some questions here. I know I had gotten some old podcast questions. I'm not going to be able to go back to them. Sorry. If there's something that I missed, and I'm sure there's stuff, feel free to email me again. So the only one I know is John had emailed me a copy of it. So wondering if I could do a deep dive on running backs. Historically, running back has been devalued. Basically, teams have moved away from it. Recently, we've seen a complete opposite shift. Teams you've historically applauded for having the best front offices, cap conscious, have all gone big on the running back. Barkley, McCaffrey, Dobbins, draft capital, and the Henry signing. Even Detroit drafted running back high, signed Montgomery. Kansas City drafted Clyde in the first round. Green Bay had Jones and signed Jacobs for a ton of money. Well-run teams, not Arizona's or the Houstons of the world. This is a new trend. Some arbitrage here. They panic moves. So I think some of them are panic moves. So, maybe I should just do a whole segment on this one of these days. I'll probably forget, though. I think you've got a couple of things at play that are here. So I'll talk a little bit about them individually, but I don't think signing running backs is necessarily awful. I'm not on the school of thought either. Now, some of these deals I don't like, but I'm not completely of the mindset that every running back is interchangeable. I think the importance level of the position is low. And I think there's value that can be found cheaply. But I do think that, I don't think that it is just any running back can do the same. That I don't believe. I think there are differences when it comes to that. Now, Kansas City, and I think this is also Green Bay when they drafted Dillon. I guess that was high second round, right? Just mentioning them that you have there. I think when you look at teams like that, I think those are areas where the teams just, they lose sight of the fact that you should always be planning for the future instead of being focused on today. Kansas City, when they took Edwards-Helaire, I think was very much of the mindset. We've got such a complete football team. This is like a fun toy for Andy to play with because, we don't really like anybody here. Like, we don't see anyone that's a standout to be selected. And we don't have any holes on our team. So we'll just take him because we think the coach can do something with him. And, personally, I just think that's an awful strategy. But I think that's what happens. I think the same thing happened in Green Bay, where you look at this and you kind of go like, well, we don't really have a lot of holes, and, having a guy to help a little bit in the running game would be a good thing for us. So I kind of think that's what's happened with those teams. I think when you see those teams draft back end of the first round, or a team that in theory should be a successful football team drafting in the second round, I think a lot of times that's what happens, is that they're either very overconfident in their roster, or they are not in love with other players that are there. Now, the other teams that you mentioned, I think in San Francisco's case, San Francisco, I have a very hard time getting a read on San Francisco these days. It's been that way for a couple of years. San Francisco's got a lot of great guys in the front office. And I truly believe that all the voices are heard there. I think they have a very complete front office. I think it is one of those when, people talk about a collaborative effort. I think that's the case. But, your GM is going to get the final say, obviously. They have a general manager that I think has a different view on football. And I think Lynch has done a good job of, trying to take everything into account. And I think he is, I kind of think falls in the category of, look, I'm going to win some of these decisions, and in some cases I'll defer to you. I think this was a case where it's like, look, this is a home run hitter type player. I just want to get him. And I think that's kind of where that came from. So I think the good part of the front office was probably overruled in that case. And that's where they went. Philadelphia's thing with Barkley, I don't understand. I can't come up with a reason on that deal whatsoever other than just picking on the Giants, and that doesn't really make sense. You're not giving someone almost $13 million a year to just poke at your rival. Like, that doesn't even make any sense. Texans with Mixon, I mean, that's just a Texans deal. I don't think Henry at $8 million is that big of a deal. I mean, it's a 1-year shot on that. I think if you look at these guys and you look at, number one, I think what teams are looking at here, let's throw out the Barkley portion of those deals. McCaffrey's number to San Francisco is probably much lower than the 16 APY, because I'm assuming higher number was paid by Carolina. I'd have to look the numbers up to see specifically on that. But I think when you get into that $8 million range where there's no long-term commitment, right? It's $8 million a year, $9 million fully guaranteed, $9 million paid this year. I think you're looking at that and saying, okay, this guy's got a track record. Now, he's probably way on the wrong side of that track record. But it's not going to hurt us financially because it's only $9 million. It's not like we're at 16 or 17. If like, what would you say is a worse deal? Would it be Derrick Henry at $8 million a year, or like random linebacker for 15 or 18, or a safety at $17 million a year? Like, the safety is going to hurt you more at 17 than a running back probably at 8. So I think that's part of it, that they see there's some value there. I think for the better run teams, that are going in there and taking players with an expectation. I think as long as the expectation on those players, it has to fit into two categories. One is that the player has to be like a real dynamic kind of player, and that you have a limited offense, and that you don't see a manner to get to a better offense. I don't think there's many teams that probably fit into that category. I could see where San Francisco thought that with Garoppolo. I could see where they thought that with Purdy. That there's limitations. So I can see that aspect of it, where you take a swing for it. The other thing is, if you do look at it, and this is what I believe the Ravens look at this like, a running game is pretty valuable when you're looking to close out games. I think it's very similar to where if you put together a good defensive line in terms of stopping the run, I think if you're a team that, is playing close games, that's going to give your offense an opportunity to get back on the field to close a game out. Similarly, if you have a solid running game, which means investments in your offensive line, a guy who can take a pounding and pick up, a couple of yards here and there, and at that same time, maybe being able to throw that dagger in a team at the end of the game. And Henry was good with that for years with the Titans. There might be some value in that. And I think from a game planning standpoint, I can understand that. And I can see taking a shot on that at $7 or $8 million a year. Look, what was better, them doing that or doing a $15 million deal with a shot Odell Beckham? I'd probably rather spend the 8 on Henry. And that's coming from someone that is very anti-running back payments here. But I do think there's value if you see that as the strategy. Now, I think Henry's a little iffy in the sense that, there's a lot of wear and tear on him, and clearly the numbers were not there last year. And that would worry me, that decline is pretty steep in. But, the Eagles, I don't know. That one surprises me. But, I think there's probably something to be said that teams are probably, you might have a couple of teams that are looking at this and saying, okay, if we look at this from a standpoint of where should the running back market be, just based natural progression as to where it was a couple of years ago, it should probably be $20 million a year. And if we're getting the number one running back in the NFL, on a piece of paper, at 12.5 or 12.6, like, there's value in that. I don't know if I agree with that, but I think that's the thought process that's probably going in more often than not, is that the market's stagnant and the numbers aren't so big, especially on the guaranteed side. The numbers are not so big that it's going to cause you any kind of long-term pain. Like, this isn't Gurley, this isn't Zeke, with those early vesting salary guarantees and all that kind of stuff. So I think those kind of things all play a role. But I think you have to be realistic as to what the role should be of of the running back in your offense. All right, let's go to Twitter here. Let's see what we got. All right, let's see. Profile. All right. 20 questions. Here we go. All right, more replies. Minnesota sports suck. What's your grade assessment in Goff's deal? Also, can they get out of it in 2027 despite some of the guarantees? So, second part of that question there, I can't really say right now because I just don't know the specifics on it. If it is the way that I have it written, I don't even have the vesting dates written there. Why did I not do that? I got to go back and put those in. I don't know why I didn't do that. I didn't put his notes in there. Silly. I think it's just a partial guarantee that's there. I don't know. I think the way the contract is done is in 2027 they could bring him down in salary. Probably not cut him, but they could bring that number down in salary. From Goff's point of view, I think it's an A. From the Lions' point of view, C minus. I just think it's too bullish for them. If you were a hot dog, would you eat yourself? I don't know that. I do not know the answer to that. Jacob, do you think the NFL will have player option contracts similar to the NBA? You mean options meaning they can opt into the deal? No. I'm not familiar enough with the NBA contracts, but I'm assuming that's what you mean. I don't see that whatsoever. I mean, the Eagles have kind of built stuff in there where they have these June 1 retirements. And the players, but they have to they have to negotiate a new deal. I don't think so. The way that the contracts are, I mean, it's pretty rare. The only team I can really even think of that does voids these days is the Rams. The Rams will do a couple of player deals where there's an incentivized deal. And if a player hits that incentive, they can opt in or out of a contract year. But I think that's that's really it. That's the only team that really does that, and I don't think that would be the case. Can you rank the best and worst 5 front offices? Oh gosh, man, I'd have to think about this. So I think your top 5 front offices. I'm just going to go through teams that I think have good front offices real quick here. I'm just going to look through Cap Room. Philadelphia, I think, is right at the top of the list. I think you can put the Chiefs in there. I know a lot comes from Mahomes, but I think you can put the Chiefs in there. I think the Rams you could kind of put in there. The Rams do some weird stuff. But they do some other stuff that's very good that I think people don't notice. I think the Ravens are very good. I think Dallas is good with certain things. I think they're bad with stuff that comes with contract extensions. It's like they're bad with timing. I think that if Jerry didn't get involved, I think Dallas would have far better outcomes on their extensions. Let's put it that way. Who else? Am I missing anyone else? I mean, the Bears have done a good job, but we still have to see how things kind of go there. How they shake out. Browns do some good, but I mean that Watson deal is so bad. Like, it's just hard to give that any kind of positive. Panthers, you can't really rate at all. They're too new. I guess the Bills I would still put up there, as being good. On the bad side, I think the Giants right now have a rough process. They have a rough lot of things. Saints, I think a lot has passed New Orleans by. It's general manager with a great history, but it's passed him by at this point, I think. Jets, I don't think Jets are good front office. I don't think the Falcons are good front office. Broncos, I don't know. They screwed themselves over with the Russell Wilson thing. Raiders, it's new, so I can't say for certain. I'd probably be pretty negative on them, certainly over the last couple of years. Chargers, that's been a rough run. Jaguars do smart things, like draft-wise. They do bad stuff sometimes free agency-wise. I don't know. I think those are the teams that I probably look at and, stick down towards the bottom. I think I probably need to do a little bit more analysis on that to really come up with top 5, bottom 5, looking at kind of draft history, strategies, free agent cap management kind of stuff. Jacob, how do offsets work? For example, in the Russell Wilson contract, did the Steelers pay Wilson $1 million and the Broncos pay $36, or did the Broncos pay all $37 and get $1 million credit? So the way that it works is, basically Wilson's contract will have a payout schedule that's in there. I don't know what that payout schedule it is. If the money actually exchanges hands, basically it would be like if you had a lien on your salary. Let's say you didn't pay your taxes, and the government went in and said, hey, look, this guy didn't pay his taxes, so you need to take 50% of his salary he gets every week or whatever, and it goes to us until this debt's paid off. It would be similar to that. Like you pay, and that money is essentially going to go direct from the Steelers to the Broncos. In general, I think most of the time the way the payout schedules work, they just don't have to pay it. But the credit does come from a cap perspective. The Broncos will have to eat all of that on the cap this year. And then they will get that $1.2 million credit on the cap next year. But in terms of the salary stuff, if they paid Wilson already, they have the right to recover that money by basically going after any money that is owed to him that they can get through the NFL. Thomas, what are the disadvantages of adding void years to a contract? So the disadvantages of it is that you're pushing more and more money to the future. And if the player is a complete wash, you're not really doing a lot, that's positive with that contract. All you're doing is making it probably more difficult on your cap to release that player because you're dumping so much money in the future, that it becomes difficult to release someone. So, that's really the main negative, is that you're pushing a very big credit card bill to the future. And it's a credit card bill that can impact you, in the present as well. Hello, Jacob. Jake, you want us to come say hi? I'll take that as a no. Sorry, I just got an email for something here. No, I'll check this out later. It's not a football related thing, except for my daughter. But that's the main disadvantage with it, is it can put you in a very negative position. Now, the way that the salary cap stuff is gone these days, I think that's less of an issue, but it is still an issue when you start using it all over the place, and that's where you end up with situations like the Saints. George, some of the national reporters were saying that the final year of Goff's contract was an option year. I assume that was similar to what you explained about Amon-Ra St. Brown's final option year. Is that the case? And I don't know. I'm sorry, I just don't know that. Hopefully I'll get that sometime soon. I would imagine that it is. I mean, so there's two things that it could be. So when somebody says it's an option year, and they're not going to, like, the stuff was all over the place on the Goff reporting. Not as bad as the Kelsey reporting. Oh my goodness, where they said he was extended, and really it was just a kind of a raise on a 2-year deal. But anyway, so by option year, that could mean an option in 2025, where the option year is what's the final year? 2029, 28, whatever that last year is. That's technically the option. Like, when I pick up that option in 2025, I am picking up the option on the final year of the contract, or it's a option in the last year, meaning you're picking up an option for, a void year in 2033 or something like that, or doing it with the double option system, which I think is what the Amon-Ra deal is. I would lean towards that, but I don't know for certain. But, I would imagine it could be either way that would be. All right, Jack, do you have Chubb's incentives? I should. Let me see. If I don't, I can get them. Let's see. Here we go. All right, so Nick Chubb. All right, so this is basically a per game bonus. So up to $2.25 million. So that's about $185.5 per game active. Rather than having it as a true per game bonus, they put a qualifier on there. So basically, as long as his play time goes up, where he improves in receptions, rushing, basically anything that he improves in, he'll start to earn that bonus. And so this way, it doesn't count on the cap this year. They'll do that as a issue after the fact. He gets $900,000 for 1,050 rushing yards, $250,000 if he gets to 1,200 yards. So, I'm sorry, that's $250 if it's he hits that 1,050 and they make the playoffs. Another $900,000 if he's at 1,200 rushing yards. Another $250 if they also made the playoffs at that point in time. Another incentive for 1,350 rushing yards. These should be cumulative. Add up and up. 10 rushing touchdowns, 12 rushing touchdowns, 15. Plus playoffs. That gives you a little bump on that. First, second team All-Pro, you get 1.5. That's probably not very likely. First, second team All-Pro, and team makes playoffs, another $200,000. So basically, if he was going to earn the first, second team All-Pro, he's probably getting a bunch of those other incentives as well. But I would say the base package on this, you're looking at that 225, and going from there. Okay, let's see. Schmitty Sports Takes. Have you ever done an analysis for quarterback AAV versus production, EPA, success rate, DVOA? Probably. I've definitely done EPA stuff before, but most of the time, when I throw these things up there, I'll throw them on Twitter. So usually they just end up as some random chart somewhere on Twitter that I'll just throw up there as a whim instead of throwing it up as a post, which probably would make more sense to do. But we have done some post analysis on that. Looked at Pro Football Focus grades, our own valuation tool that we keep, which it takes into account grades. It takes into account certain statistical thresholds, and it takes into account playing time, for those players. I've used DVOA a lot in the past. It's really just whatever I have easiest access to, to work with some of those things. Now, with quarterbacks, it's easier because we're really only talking about like every year 40 players, so you can easily go in and grab a table from somewhere to do that with. Unlike other things where you're trying to figure out how to cross-reference like 8 million different players, whatever their identifiers are with your identifiers, and ways that you have their name versus that, becomes a lot more difficult. But yeah, you can look at those things, and I definitely have some stuff on there, and what you'll find is that, in my experience, at least with it, and going off of memory here, that basically those players who are highly paid, you'll see a split. Now, some of those splits, obviously, the issues with injuries, you can't really take that into account as much. But, I think what you find is that half of the highly paid quarterbacks are among the best performing players every year. And then you have half of the high paid quarterbacks are probably disappointments, in any given season. Those handful of guys that are in between. Now, we're really just starting to get a little bit more of a middle market. But, historically, whatever those players are that are middle market, your Nick Foles, Mike Glennon kind of type players have not been good. And then when you get down with the rookies, it's, you're either great or you suck. Not a lot of in-betweens there either. So, you plot those things, and it is a, it's kind of a wacky plot, and, you can look at it, and I think the thing that you come up with is that the safest path that there is to quality quarterback play is having a expensive quarterback on your team, but it's no guarantee. And, I think that's the thing that's hurt a lot of teams is, you'll take a player like a Daniel Jones and you'll overpay on that because it's like, well, we've got good enough quarterback play from him, and the unknown could be Zach Wilson. And, I think that kind of comes up a lot. Jake, when do front offices do the most and least of their work? What are busy seasons and what are they doing? So this is the least seasons. They all go on vacation starting sometime in June, right after that first set of OTAs. I think it depends on, what roles they have as to, what you're doing a lot of. Draft prep is obviously very, deep. Prepping for free agency, that's a lot of work too. Getting into training camp, you're coordinating a lot of schedules. You've got a lot of extension talk, a lot of roster decisions, a lot of pay cuts, a lot of extensions, a lot of sad news being delivered to players that they're being released. So, there's a lot of stuff that goes on there. And you're doing football administration a lot. You need to coordinate travel, where you're staying, where you're going. There's a lot that goes on there. But I would just say from, and people might say differences with this, but in terms of like working, I would imagine August has got to be very busy. I think February has to be very busy. March is obviously very busy. That's free agency. April, because you're gearing up crazy for that draft. I would think those are kind of your busiest months. Your slowest months are going to be mid-June to late July. Yeah, that's basically vacation time, around the league. Colin, do you have a favorite story from any of the Tulane football negotiation competitions? If so, can you please tell it? I was not in the room for this one, but I got a text the minute that it happened. Someone got sick all over the table in the middle of negotiation. That was a good one. I think the person said they had bad shrimp, but it's New Orleans. Let's be honest. We all know what was going on there. That was a late night, the night before that competition, I believe. That was a good one. There, in the early days of that competition, and I haven't gone the last 2 years, but in the early days of that competition, there were some interesting characters that would get pretty lit up at night, and they would have some real interesting conversations telling you were wrong as a judge. They know the cap rules, you don't. But, the throw-up story was really good. Otherwise, my stuff skews more towards, really bad stuff. There was a negotiation I judged for... Who was the player? It was a safety, I think. I want to say it was Harrison Smith, but it seems like that would be too long ago. He was just name mentioned. I don't know. But anyway, the team started out... I think their offer was on a player that probably should have been paid around $10-11 million a year. And I don't remember the player, but it was definitely a safety. Probably should have been paid like 10, 11, 12 million at the time or something like that. I think they started out their negotiating at 3. The total negotiation took maybe 6 minutes. The final deal ended up at about $16 million a year. I thought that was hilarious. It was just like, wow. How do you go from 3, which was insulting, to being like, yeah, I get, 16 million a year. That makes sense. Let's shake on that. Good job. That was fast. What? I didn't even know what happened there. I couldn't even, I usually would keep up with the numbers. I didn't even bother with this one. It was just funny. There are things like that, that are pretty funny, that come up there. But a lot of times it's just the silly stuff that happens, after the fact when, someone tells you you're wrong or something like that. But definitely the kid who puked. I mean, that was a good one. You don't know what you're missing if you haven't gone. Stevie, last one of the IDSIC 12 from a cap perspective, you were in favor of the 12 draft picks. In theory, it's a great way to hedge your bets in the draft. Saves money as a good chunk of your roster will be rookies. So draft basically dart throws 12. Yeah, so 12 is going to beat 7. I don't think there was anything wrong with IDSIC going in the, heavy draft route. Let's see. Whoops. Let's look up Jets draft history from Pro Football Reference here. Let me go back to that draft. Oh, God, I hate going back to the IDSIC years. I just hate going back to any of these Jets years. It's just all terrible. So, all right. So we get in here. But these are the issues. So, you get into this deep draft class. It's you're drafting a safety. You're drafting a tight end. These are bad bad selections. Man, how could you be this bad? And the only guy you really come out of this was this Quincy Enunwa, who was okay, and really only got the bigger extension because you were trying to make a case to save your own job. I think Calvin Pryor once yelled at me on Twitter. I think that was a player who did that. He got mad, I think, because I said that I thought his I'm pretty sure he was the guy. I think I put out there, which was not meant to be a negative comment, but he took it that way, that I thought his future in the league was as a linebacker and not a safety. A lot of safeties are a little bit better suited to play linebacker. So it had to do with, I think, whatever he was doing with, what was it? It was coverage on someone, probably. That was probably not well done. But, it was also that he was at times maybe okay in a run sport. And so I think I put out there hey, I think he might have a future at a linebacker versus being a safety. I think that was the guy that I did that with. And the game was maybe over by 15 or 20 minutes. And he was online on Twitter, I guess, searching his name out. And, took issue with whatever I was saying, which was not even said in a negative way. However I wrote it was not I didn't think at least negative tone, but he took it that way. You go back to Idzik the year before, even Geno Smith at quarterback. I mean, that's fine, taking him in the second round. Him the year before was probably a little bit better. But even still wasn't great. And, I never liked the Milliner pick. Even, obviously in hindsight, it was awful. But I hate the idea of trading away a guy who's a great player at a position and then going in and drafting that same position. Now, it can work out sometimes, right? Minnesota, Justin Jefferson, after getting rid of Diggs. But yeah, that was, I didn't like it for that reason. It's it's just not expectations you can live up to. You can't replace a player like that. But yeah, you look at this and it's getting all these draft picks makes sense. Going safety tight end, I mean, you're just begging to be fired. It's you have an awful, awful, awful football team and you go safety tight end? Come on. Just awful. Worst general manager Jets ever had. That's saying something. All right. Stevie, let's continue that. Oh, you're killing me. Idzik, McCagnon, Tannenbaum, Douglas. How do you compare and contrast? Is the Idzik 12? Is that the worst draft class of all time? I don't know if it's the worst of all time. It's probably pretty close, though. Yeah, it's got to be pretty close, man. It's every dart throw missed the board completely, except for Nunwa. So, comparing and contrasting these guys. So, Idzik was just... He wasn't meant to be a general manager of a team in New York City, the New York area. Let's just leave it at that. Micromanaging just didn't fit with the media, didn't fit with the fan base, didn't fit with the people that existed in the front office, didn't fit with the people that ran the team. Just that it was a complete, square peg in a round hole kind of situation. I think McCagnon, I think he kind of. I think there's a lot of similarities between Maccagnan and Joe Douglas. I think both fall much more on that kind of scouting background. I think Douglas is probably more aggressive with trade ups and was better at getting value on trade outs. I think Maccagnan was probably overall a better drafter. And I know that Douglas has had higher highs. I'm going to say Maccagnan was probably a better drafter because what I'm going by with that is that Douglas has had some god-awful picks. Maccagnan was probably a little bit more so-so. Obviously Darren Lee, I think, was under him, right? That was terrible. Let's see. I'm probably going to get some of these years wrong here. Leonard Williams was fine. The Darren Lee, Christian Hackenberg. I mean, that was a rough draft. Jamal Adams was very good. Marcus May was good. There's safeties. I don't get the safety bit. Both guys. You look at all these players. Quinn Williams very good, obviously. But you look at these. It's very similar. Like, you're not seeing that positional value. It's the, trust the board, trust the board, trust the board. Like, this guy's a 96. This guy's a 95.5. I got to take the 96. It's like, but the 96 plays safety. The 95.5 is an edge rusher. Well, trust the board, man. Trust the board. Just wait till you see him. Trust the board. I think there's a lot of similarities between the two of them. I think both have fallen into the trap of, you do some things that are probably pleasing to the owner. Trading for Rodgers, signing Le'Veon Bell, signing certain players in free agency to create a buzz in the offseason. I think that's how that is. Tannenbaum was different. I think Mike was someone that, where I mentioned about John Lynch before, a collaborative effort. I think Tannenbaum was much more of a collaborative effort with his head coaches and his front office. I think he was open to the idea of, look, I'm a salary cap guy. That's my background, right? Legal background. Numbers, contracts, that kind of stuff. I'm open to listening about everything else. I think he was good in that regard. And I think you saw that with a lot of the draft picks that you could tell, like, this is kind of, you could see the Rex Ryan influence on this pick. You can see the Eric Mangini influence on this one. I think he was really good with that. I think Idzik was terrible when it came to working with a head coach. I think Douglas is neutral with working with a head coach. I think Maccagnan was... I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on that. Maybe neutral as well. But I think Tannenbaum was actually pretty good in that regard. I think Tannenbaum was the last general manager that actually had a real concrete vision for the team. The only thing I'll say is that I think, and they all do, they get a little starstruck, and obviously he did. I think, well, seeing how things got with Idzik, I mean, it ended up being awful. I could also see a situation where Tannenbaum could have driven the team completely off the rails with, like, some crazy contract stuff or something that was done to please whatever. But I mean, the one thing, and so I mentioned that with Douglas and Maccagnan, but it was true with Tannenbaum as well, right? Trading for Tim Tebow and making the trade for Brett Favre, and so that's an ownership issue. When you see that over multiple GMs, doing some of this splashy stuff, a lot of times that's probably an ownership thing, but. Tannenbaum never should have been fired after that, 2012 season. Never should have been fired. Jets had no plan in mind. It was just, I need a fall guy. I don't want it to be Rex because I like him too much. It's got to be Mike. Mike's been around here since, well, he's been around the organization forever. But he's been GM since 2006. Got to make a change, and then Rex is going to make it work. It was a big mistake. I think Woody looked at this and was like, okay, like, this is how things work in the league. A lot of the good that was done, people are saying it's Rex. Like, Rex has helped him with a lot of these picks, and Mancini helped him with some of the picks before that, and, whatever. And it's like, it was, I truly believe this, that it was truly a collaborative effort. And it was not a butting heads kind of thing. And, I just think they just had no vision. That there was no plan of action, course of action that they had in their mind when they moved on from him. It was just, I gotta throw somebody in the fire so people stop complaining, and everything has gone downhill since that point in time. So they may have gone downhill with Tannenbaum in charge, but I think he probably gave them their best chance of, kind of righting the ship. It's 2026. Who's still a Jet out of these guys? Garrett Wilson, Jermaine Johnson, Sauce Gardner, Breece Hall, Quinn Williams. 2026. I think Quinnen, Johnson. If I'm a betting man, I'm going to say nobody else. My assumption is things are not going to go good this year, and I just think that's probably what's going to happen. If the Jets do have a good year, and Douglas remains as general manager, I think the guy at that point that would go is probably Johnson of that group. I think he would extend the other three. Brian, any Jets games you want to go to this season? How does Halloween night sound? All these night games are terrible. I'm too old to go to the night games anymore. I haven't really even looked at the way the schedule broke down to see. I probably will not be going to any Jets games this year. If I go to anything, I'll go to a preseason game because I think Jacob wants to go to a game. I still not feeling taking him to a regular season game. So maybe a preseason game. I know he enjoys going to the Rutgers games. We went to 2 Rutgers games last year. But, the going to the pro game is a little bit different. So, I don't know. But I haven't really looked at the schedule. John, which NFL front office is currently doing the best job of cap management with regards to drafted player retention, future flexibility to keep their own, all while keeping dead money to a minimum? That's another one I really have to look at. Goodness. I think I'd probably still lean towards the Eagles. Even though, the further out you get, the less and less cap room they have. But all the guys that you really want them to keep, they will keep. When you get into drafted player retention, the Rams are very good with that. And they've fixed their cap tremendously. Dallas, but I don't know. It's hard to say. Some of their retention rates are probably a little too high. They're just doing it to do it. Baltimore is very good. Um, let's see. Who are the 5 worst front offices when it comes to cap management? Giants are poor. Seahawks are poor. Saints are poor. Who would it be my other bottom two? Bills have done some dumb stuff. But overall, I mean, that's more of a current kind of issue. I think the Dolphins haven't been great. I'm trying to think of who would be number 5. I think I'd throw the Dolphins in there. I mean, I'd throw historically, I mean, the Panthers belong in there. It's just a new front office, so it's hard to say. Atlanta. Atlanta's probably the other team I'd throw in there, even though they did have a lot of cap room this year. But in fairness to them, a lot of that is a carryover from, years prior. Those are the teams that kind of stand out there. But it's a little hard to say because you've got, so many changes all the time in the front office. I can see why you would put the Raiders there because the, Chargers are not in a great spot. Same general manager. Historically the Cardinals have been atrocious, but, they're different people now. The Raiders, they were bad before this too. It's like, do you give the benefit of the doubt? I don't know. Jake, what are your thoughts on private equity and other institutional investment in NFL teams? How do you think it would change the league? I don't think it would change the league. I don't know if the league would go for it. I forget exactly what the rules are on the ownership. For what they have to do. I guess what would happen, and I don't think that would probably go through, but I think what would change would be a lot of the stuff that you see that comes out from like the owners' meetings. Because I think that would really dramatically change stuff when you start getting into like equity firms, being the primary motivating factor behind certain things going on with the teams. But I'm not sure if they would allow that to kind of come through. I definitely do not think that the NFL would ever allow, the Saudi groups to come in, and do like that kind. I don't think that would happen. However, whoever they would buy a franchise from, I mean, it would make a killing if they brought in the wealth fund or whatever that is. They make a killing. Miguel, what's your current projection for the 2025 league cap number? My assumption is 25 is probably going to be around like 270, maybe 275-ish. 270 to 275 is probably where I'll put it. One of these days I'll change this from the 260. I think I'm just going to wait until the summer. Probably until it gets to regular season, just because I like to track this stuff kind of from the start of the off season to where teams stand at the end of August. And it's much easier for me to do if I just keep this number the same, even though it's not that difficult for me to adjust. It just becomes a little bit easier to do. So that's usually why I do it that way. Let's see, anything else? Nope. I think that's it. So that should do it for me. see how these things end up. I'm glad. I think that was Stevie that all the Jets questions brought me down. Even worst path as a Jets fan here to relive the wonderful years of John Idzik. That's a great time. Anyway, everybody have a great week. I'm not sure if I'll be on next weekend. Probably not. Like I said, I think that's Megan's recital. So probably the weekend after that, I'll do a podcast again, barring any emergencies. So everybody have a great week, and I will talk to you all again soon.